The anonymous voicemail hit my phone at 1:22 p.m. during lunch break. I was sitting in my truck outside a taco stand on Federal Boulevard, watching the guys from my crew argue about the Broncos draft picks, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Ray Fisher, your wife's been sleeping with Victor Hale for 8 months. Check the toolbox in her Subaru, the one she keeps locked. There's a compartment under the false bottom. That was it. No name, no explanation. Just a woman's voice, scratchy, maybe disguised, and the sound of the call ending. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, staring at the half-eaten burrito in my lap. 8 months. That would put the start of the affair right around when Lena announced her pregnancy. My hands were shaking when I called my foreman and told him I had a family emergency. Tony didn't ask questions. He'd known me for 11 years. Lena's Subaru was parked in our driveway in Lakewood. She'd taken a half-day doctor's appointment, she'd said. Her belly was getting big enough now that she was seeing the OB every 2 weeks. Or so she told me. I found the toolbox behind the spare tire. Heavy duty, padlocked. The kind you'd keep on a job site. I'd never seen it before. I'm an iron worker. Been one since I was 19. Union man, local 24. I've got tools for every situation, including a battery-powered angle grinder that went through that padlock like it was made of butter. The top layer was ordinary enough. Flashlights, zip ties, a first aid kit. But I'd heard what the caller said about a false bottom, and when I pried up the foam insert, my stomach dropped through the floor. Letters, photographs, a burner phone, and a manila folder stuffed with documents that didn't make sense at first, until they made too much sense. The letters were from Victor Hale. Some of them were love letters, if you want to call them that. The kind of graphic, degrading garbage that made me want to put my fist through the window. But mixed in with the romantic sewage were other letters, business letters, references to the arrangement and our agreement and the project timeline. The photographs were worse, not the intimate ones, though those burned themselves into my brain like a brand, but the others. Photos of building permits, photos of inspection certificates, photos of what looked like safety override codes. And then I found the blueprints. 3 sets of structural plans, folded up tight at the bottom of the compartment. I'm not an engineer, but I've been hanging steel for almost 2 decades. I can read a blueprint like most people read a menu. And what I was looking at made my blood run cold. The first set was for a 12-story mixed-use building going up downtown. The steel specifications listed were at least 2 grades below what any competent engineer would approve for that height. The load calculations were fantasy. The foundation depth was a joke. The second set was for an apartment complex in Aurora. Same story. Substandard materials, insufficient reinforcement, corners cut everywhere that mattered. The third set was for the new Riverside Elementary School. And it was the worst of all. I'd worked on that foundation. My crew had poured the footings back in March. And according to these blueprints, which didn't match the approved plans I'd seen on site, the concrete mix had been altered, the rebar spacing widened, and the foundation depth reduced by 18 inches. 18 inches might not sound like much, but in structural engineering, 18 inches can be the difference between a building standing for 100 years and a building collapsing in 5. I sat in my driveway with those blueprints spread across my lap, and I understood something that the anonymous caller had probably already known. This wasn't just an affair. This was construction fraud on a scale that could kill hundreds of people. And my pregnant wife was at the center of it. The next morning, I called in sick. First time in 8 years. Tony didn't believe me for a second. Ray, what's going on? You sound like you've been gargling gravel. Stomach thing. I'll be back tomorrow. You need anything? Maria can bring over some of her soup. I'm good, Tony. Just need to sleep it off. I hung up and drove to the downtown mixed-use site, the one where Miguel Reyes had died. The building was at 15 stories now, wrapped in scaffolding and safety netting. I parked across the street and watched the crews work, studying the structure with new eyes. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see it. The steel connections that didn't quite match spec. The way certain beams seemed undersized for the loads they were carrying. The subtle signs of corners being cut everywhere it mattered. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Close-ups of the connection points. Wide shots of the overall structure. Notes on everything that looked wrong. A security guard came over after about 20 minutes. Young guy, bored, probably making $12 an hour to stand around and look intimidating. Help you with something? Just admiring the work. I showed him my union card. I'm a steel worker. Always interesting to see how other crews handle a project this size. He relaxed slightly. Yeah, it's been a beast. You hear about the guy who fell back in April? Miguel Reyes. Yeah, I knew him. The guard's face changed. Sorry, man. That was rough. The whole site was shut down for a week. They ever figure out what happened? He shrugged. Scaffold failure. Anchors gave out or something. At least that's what the report said. You don't sound convinced. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. Look, I'm not trying to start rumors, but some of the guys were saying that scaffold was sketchy from day one, like way undersized for what they were using it for. But when they complained to the site super, let me guess, nothing happened. Less than nothing. The guy who complained loudest got transferred to a different project. After that, everyone kept their mouths shut. I filed that information away. Thanks for the chat. Yeah, sure. Take care of yourself. I drove to the Aurora apartment site next. Same story. A building that looked fine from a distance but revealed its flaws up close. The foundation work was shoddy, the concrete showing hairline cracks that shouldn't have appeared for years. The rebar I could see through an uncovered section was spaced too far apart. David Watkins had died here. According to the news, a concrete form had collapsed during a pour, burying him under 2 tons of wet cement. But looking at the site now, I could see a dozen things that might have contributed. Substandard bracing. Formwork that was clearly being reused past its safe lifespan. Safety rails that were more suggestion than protection. 2 men dead. And their deaths had been written off as accidents because the people responsible for preventing them were the same people causing them. I sat in my truck for a long time, watching the crews work, thinking about what to do next. I didn't confront Lena that night. I couldn't. I needed to understand what I was looking at before I made any moves. See, here's what you need to know about construction fraud. It's not like stealing money from a register. It's not even like embezzlement. When you cheat on building materials and safety specifications, you're not just committing a crime. You're building a time bomb. That apartment complex with the substandard steel? It might stand for 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 20. But eventually, something gives. An earthquake that would have been survivable becomes a collapse. A fire that should have been contained becomes an inferno. And people die. I spent that night in my garage, going through every document in that toolbox while Lena slept upstairs. By 3 a.m., I had a timeline. 8 months ago, Victor Hale had hired Lena as a special projects coordinator for his development company, Hale Construction. Her official title at work was site supervisor for the city. She was supposed to be the one making sure contractors like Victor followed the rules. But according to these documents, she'd been doing the opposite. She'd been approving falsified inspection reports, signing off on substandard materials, and helping Victor bypass every safety regulation in the book. The money was staggering. According to the spreadsheets I found, Victor had saved $2.3 million across 12 construction sites by using inferior materials and paying off inspectors. And Lena had been getting a cut, 30 grand deposited into a bank account I'd never known existed. But what really broke me wasn't the money. It was the 2 newspaper clippings at the bottom of the folder. The first was about a construction worker named Miguel Reyes, who died in April when a scaffold collapsed at the downtown mixed-use building. Accident, the article said. Investigation ongoing. The second was about another worker, David Watkins, killed in June when a concrete form gave way at the Aurora apartment site. Tragedy, the headline read. Family seeks answers. I'd known Miguel. He'd worked with my buddy Carlos for 3 years. Good guy, sent money back to his mom in Guadalajara every month. And now he was dead. Because my wife helped cover up the reason that scaffold wasn't built to code. I waited 2 days before I confronted her. 2 days of pretending everything was normal, eating dinner across from her, watching her rub her belly and talk about nursery colors while I knew what was in that toolbox. On Thursday night, I came home early and found her in the kitchen making pasta. Lena, we need to talk. She looked up and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Just for a second. Fear. About what? I put the folder on the counter. The one with Victor's letters. The one with the safety override codes and the falsified inspection reports. About this. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. She grabbed the counter for support, her other hand going to her belly. Ray, where did you get that? Does it matter? I can explain. Can you explain Miguel Reyes? Can you explain David Watkins? Her mouth opened, then closed. I watched her try to find the words, watched her calculate how much I knew and how much she could still deny. Those were accidents, she finally said. I didn't have anything to do with. The scaffold that killed Miguel was supposed to be rated for 1,500 pounds. Victor's crew built it to hold 800 max because they used the cheap anchors instead of the approved ones. You signed off on that, Lena. Your signature is on the inspection report. I didn't know. Bull. My voice cracked. I hadn't meant it to. You knew exactly what you were signing. You've been in construction oversight for 6 years. You know more about safety codes than half the engineers in this city. Don't stand there and tell me you didn't know. She started crying then. Big, heaving sobs that might have moved me 2 days ago. Now they just made me sick. It started small, she said through the tears. Victor said it was just minor adjustments. Things that wouldn't matter. He said the safety margins were overbuilt anyway, that engineers always add too much cushion. And you believed him? He was convincing, Ray. And he made me feel what? Important? Sexy? Rich? I laughed, and it sounded ugly even to me. How much did it cost for you to sell your soul, Lena? 30 grand? Is that the going rate for getting men killed? I never thought anyone would get hurt. Well, they did, and it's going to get worse. I pulled out the blueprints for Riverside Elementary. You know what this is? Her face went gray. Ray, don't. This is the school that's supposed to open in 6 weeks. 800 kids, Lena. 800 children sitting in a building that's going to collapse because the foundation wasn't poured to spec. Because the concrete mix was wrong. Because you and your boyfriend decided that kids' lives weren't worth as much as Victor's profit margin. I didn't know about the school until last month. I swear to God, Ray, when I found out what they'd done to that foundation, I told Victor we had to stop. We had to fix it. And what did he say? She wiped her face with the back of her hand. He said it was too late. He said if we tried to fix it now, the whole thing would come out. Everything. We'd all go to prison. So you just went along with it. What was I supposed to do? I don't know, Lena. Maybe not sleep with a murderer? Maybe not help him cover up killing workers? Maybe think about literally anyone besides yourself for 5 minutes? She flinched like I'd hit her. That's not fair. Fair? I grabbed the folder and stuffed the blueprints back inside. You want to talk about fair? Miguel Reyes had a kid, 7 years old. His wife calls Carlos every week, crying, asking if anyone's going to tell her what really happened to her husband. Is that fair? Lena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop this. I'm going to make sure that school doesn't open. And I'm going to make sure Victor Hale spends the rest of his life in a cell. Ray, if you go to the authorities, I'll… Go to prison? Yeah, I know. I looked at her belly, at the child growing inside her. My child. Or maybe Victor's child. I realized I didn't even know anymore. Get a paternity test. What? You heard me. I want a paternity test. And until I see the results, don't expect me to be here playing happy husband while you figure out how to cover your tracks. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Ray, please. Where are you going? To talk to someone who might actually give a damn about those dead workers. I didn't sleep that night. Drove around Denver for hours, past the construction sites I'd worked on over the years, past buildings I'd helped build. Every one of them represented trust. The trust that someone had done the calculations right, that the materials were what they were supposed to be, that the people responsible for safety actually cared about keeping people alive. How many other projects were out there like Victor's? How many buildings in this city were time bombs waiting to go off? Around 4 a.m., I parked at a 24-hour diner off I-70 and ordered coffee. I didn't drink. The folder sat on the table in front of me, stuffed with evidence of my wife's betrayal and 2 men's deaths. The waitress, older woman, tired eyes, probably at the end of a double shift, refilled my cup and glanced at the folder. You okay, honey? You look like somebody died. Yeah, I said. Somebody did. The OSHA regional office was in a bland federal building downtown. I walked in with the folder under my arm at 8 the next morning, looking like I hadn't slept, which I hadn't. The receptionist told me I needed an appointment. I told her I had evidence of construction fraud that had killed 2 people and was about to kill 800 more. She made a phone call. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from a woman named Elena Vasquez. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, the kind of face that said she'd seen too much and believed even less. Mr. Fisher, she said, looking at the documents I'd spread across her desk. Before we go any further, I need to ask how you came by this information. Does it matter? It might matter a lot in court. My wife is involved. Was involved. I found these documents in her possession. Elena's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift behind her eyes. Your wife is Lena Fisher, site supervisor for the city? You know her? I know of her. Elena picked up one of the falsified inspection reports. We've had some concerns about certain projects she's been overseeing. Nothing concrete, just patterns that didn't quite add up. Well, now you've got concrete. I pulled out the blueprints. These are the actual specifications being used on 3 of Victor Hale's projects. They don't match the approved plans. Elena spent the next hour going through the documents. I watched her face get progressively grimmer as she realized what she was looking at. "This is systematic," she finally said. "This isn't one contractor cutting corners. This is an organized scheme to defraud on materials across multiple sites." It gets worse. I told her about the Riverside Elementary Foundation, about the concrete mix, about the rebar spacing. When I finished, Elena was pale. "That school is scheduled to open in 6 weeks. I know. 800 children. I know." She picked up her phone. "I need to make some calls. This is going to require federal involvement. FBI possibly. Maybe the U.S. Attorney's Office." "What about the school?" "We'll get an emergency stop work order. But Mr. Fisher, you need to understand something." She set the phone down and looked at me with those sharp eyes. "The people you're describing, Victor Hale, the city inspectors involved, they're not going to go quietly. Your wife is right in the middle of this. When this comes out, and it will come out, her life is over. She's looking at federal charges, manslaughter, fraud, conspiracy." "I understand. Do you? Because you're also the father of her unborn child. This isn't just about justice. This is about destroying your family." I thought about Miguel Reyes, about his 7-year-old kid who would grow up without a father, about the 800 children who might not grow up at all if that school opened as planned. "Do what you need to do," I said. The next 5 weeks were the longest of my life. Elena brought in the FBI on day 3. An agent named Marcus Webb, built like a linebacker, with the kind of methodical intensity that made you believe he'd run through a brick wall if the evidence was on the other side. "We've been watching Victor Hale for 18 months, Marcus told me during our first meeting. "We knew he was dirty, but we couldn't prove it. You just handed us the keys to the castle." The investigation expanded fast. Turns out Victor wasn't just bribing my wife. He had a whole network. Dale Murphy, the city's chief building inspector, had been on Victor's payroll for 3 years. So had 2 other site supervisors and a materials testing lab that had been falsifying concrete strength reports. I kept working during the day, hanging steel like nothing was wrong. But every night, I was meeting with Elena and Marcus, going over documents, explaining the technical details they didn't understand. "Walk me through this again," Marcus said one night, spreading blueprints across his desk. "How do you know the steel is wrong just by looking at the specs?" "It's about load capacity." I pulled out a calculator. "This building is 12 stories, mixed use. Retail on the bottom, offices in the middle, residential on top. Different load requirements for each section. The approved plans call for W14 890 beams on the main structural grid. That's a wide flange beam, 14 inches deep, 90 pounds per foot." "Okay. But the materials manifest Victor actually ordered, the one I found in Lena's files, shows W14 Ing 61. Same depth, but only 61 pounds per foot. 30% less steel, 30% less capacity. And that's significant? It's the difference between a building that stands for 100 years and one that collapses when you get a heavy snow load on the roof, or an earthquake, or even just normal settling over time." Elena leaned forward. "How did he get away with it? Don't inspectors verify this stuff?" "They're supposed to. They check materials against the approved plans. But if the inspector is being paid to look the other way, I shrugged. Dale Murphy signed off on every one of Victor's projects. Surprise, surprise, Marcus made a note. What about the concrete? Same deal, different method. I pulled out a stack of lab reports. These are from the testing company Victor was using. They're supposed to take samples from every concrete pour, test them for compressive strength, make sure the mix is right. Look at these numbers. He studied the reports. They all pass. Exactly. Every single one. Perfect scores across the board. You know how often that happens in real life? Never. Never. There's always variation. Temperature changes, humidity, differences in aggregate. A real lab report shows fluctuation. These are fake. They're copying numbers to make it look legitimate. We kept meeting. 3 times a week at first, then every night as the case grew. My union brothers started helping too. Tony, my foreman, had suspected something was wrong at the Aurora apartment site where David Watkins died. He'd filed a safety complaint that had somehow gotten lost in the system. Now we knew why. He started quietly reaching out to other workers who'd noticed anomalies on Victor's projects. Ramirez from Local 217 has photos, Tony told me one night over beers at his kitchen table. He was working the foundation crew at the apartment site. Said the rebar spacing was way off from what the plans showed, but when he brought it up to the super, he got told to mind his own business. Can he testify? He's scared. Got 3 kids, can't afford to get blackballed. Tony took a long pull from his bottle. But I think he'll come around. He knew David. They worked together for 6 years. The network of willing witnesses grew slowly. A crane operator who'd noticed load limits being exceeded. An electrician who'd seen wiring installed that didn't meet code. A plumber who'd documented shortcuts in the fire suppression system. These people are putting their careers on the line, Elena said during one of our meetings. Victor has a reputation for destroying people who cross him. Then we better make sure he doesn't get the chance. By week 2, we had statements from 14 construction workers describing unsafe conditions. By week 3, we had documentation of 37 separate code violations across 12 sites. By week 4, the FBI had turned one of Victor's project managers, a guy named Peterson, who'd gotten cold feet when he heard about the elementary school. Peterson was the break we needed. I met him once at a neutral location Marcus set up, a conference room in a federal building, sterile and anonymous. He was in his early 30s, sweating through his dress shirt, with the haunted eyes of a man who hadn't slept in weeks. I didn't know about the school at first, he said, his voice cracking. Victor kept me in the dark. I was just managing the downtown project, making sure the crews stayed on schedule. I knew we were cutting corners on materials, everyone knew, but I told myself it wasn't dangerous. The margins are always overbuilt, right? That's what Victor said. When did that change? Peterson looked at the table. 4 months ago. Victor called me into his office, showed me the plans for Riverside Elementary, the foundation specs. He swallowed hard. He wanted me to manage the concrete pour. Make sure nobody asked questions about the mix. And you did it? I said no. First time I ever said no to him. He laughed, bitter and hollow. He told me I could either get on board or get out. And if I got out, he'd make sure I never worked in construction again. He had photos of me with... Peterson stopped. It doesn't matter. He had leverage. So what changed? Kids, man. 800 kids. His eyes were wet now. I've got a daughter. She's 5. She's going to be in elementary school in 2 years. And I kept thinking, what if it was her school? What if I helped build a building that killed someone's kid? Peterson gave them everything. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the bribes to Dale Murphy, and the recordings. Victor, it turned out, was paranoid enough to record his own phone calls. Probably thought it gave him leverage. Instead, it gave the FBI hours of tape documenting exactly how the scheme worked, including a conversation from 4 months ago where Victor and Lena discussed what to do about the Miguel situation. He saw the invoice for the anchors, Victor's voice said on the recording. He knows we swapped them out. Can't you just pay him off? He's not interested in money. He's a true believer, says he's going to his union rep. Then we need to make sure he doesn't get the chance. There was a long pause. Then Victor. I'll handle it. Miguel Reyes died 3 days later. I listened to that recording in Marcus's office. When it ended, I had to excuse myself to throw up in the bathroom. My wife hadn't just helped cover up a death. She'd helped cause one. I moved out of the house at the start of week 3. Couldn't look at Lena anymore. Couldn't sit across the dinner table from her while she pretended everything was normal, while my baby grew inside her and I wondered if it was even mine. The paternity test came back on day 18. The baby was mine. I don't know if that made things better or worse. I crashed at my buddy Carlos's place. His wife made me eat. His kids distracted me with their homework questions and their constant requests to play video games. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, trying to figure out how my life had gone so wrong. What had I missed? What signs had I ignored? I thought back through the past 8 months, looking for the moment I should have known. Lena working late, Lena buying new clothes, Lena suddenly interested in the gym, Lena protective of her phone, always keeping it face down or taking it with her to the bathroom. Classic signs, obvious in retrospect. But I'd trusted her. We'd been married for 7 years. I thought I knew her. Turns out I didn't know a thing. The sting operation came together in week 4. Marcus had a plan. Arrange a fake emergency inspection that would require Victor, Dale Murphy, and Lena to all be present at the same location. The FBI would have teams standing by, local police too, and OSHA inspectors ready to shut down every one of Victor's active sites simultaneously. We hit everything at once, Marcus explained, pointing to a map with red pins marking each location. 12 sites, simultaneous raids. We've got warrants for Victor's office, his home, Dale Murphy's residence, and the testing lab. The moment we have Victor in custody, teams move in everywhere else. What about evidence destruction? We've had digital surveillance on their communications for a week. If anyone tries to wipe files or shred documents, we'll know. Plus, Peterson has been feeding us information about where Victor keeps his most sensitive records. Marcus smiled grimly. Turns out he's old school. Keeps hard copies of everything in a safe at his office. Doesn't trust the cloud. I wasn't supposed to be involved. Marcus made that clear. You're a civilian, and you're too close to this. If something goes wrong, nothing's going to go wrong. If Lena sees you there, then she sees me. I don't care. Marcus studied me for a long moment. You understand what's going to happen to her. 8 to 10 years, federal prison. She'll give birth in custody. The baby will be taken away, placed with family or foster care until she's released. I'll have the baby. You sure about that? Raising a kid alone while dealing with all this? She's my daughter. The ultrasound had come back the week before. A girl. I'm not letting her grow up in the system because her mother made choices. Marcus nodded slowly. All right. But you stay in the van with the surveillance team. You don't go near the site until we've got everyone in custody. The day of the operation was cloudless and cold. October in Colorado. The kind of crisp autumn day that makes you glad to be alive. I sat in the surveillance van with Elena and two FBI techs, drinking bad coffee and watching the feeds from hidden cameras placed around the site. The elementary school construction site was eerily quiet. The work crews had been given the day off. Equipment malfunction, according to the cover story, so the only people present would be our targets. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Primary target approaching, one of the techs announced. Victor arrived first. Black Mercedes, custom plates. He got out looking like a man who owned the world. 6'2", silver hair, the kind of deep tan you get from playing golf 3 times a week. He adjusted his suit jacket and checked his phone, completely oblivious to the cameras capturing his every move. Secondary target. Dale Murphy showed up 5 minutes later. Nervous, sweating despite the October chill. He knew something was wrong. You could see it in the way he kept looking around, checking his phone, wiping his palms on his pants. Dale doesn't like this, Elena murmured. Look at him. He's ready to bolt. He won't. He's too scared of Victor. Tertiary target. Coming in now. And then Lena. She parked her Subaru near the construction trailer and walked toward the others with her hand on her belly. Even through the grainy camera feed, I could see how tired she looked, how scared. I watched her approach Victor, watched him put a proprietary hand on her arm, watched her flinch away. Audio's up, one of the techs said. Victor's voice crackled through the speakers. Peterson said there's a stress fracture in the south foundation wall. If it's real, we've got major problems. Is it real? Dale asked. Probably not. Peterson's been jumpy lately, but we need to check it out before the final inspection next week. I don't like this, Lena said. Her voice was thin, strained. Something feels wrong. Everything's fine. We just need to... The FBI moved then. Fast, coordinated, exactly like Marcus had planned. Black SUVs came from 3 directions, blocking the exits. Agents in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn. FBI, everyone on the ground, now! I watched Victor's face go from confusion to understanding to rage in about 2 seconds. He tried to run. Got about 10 feet before 2 agents tackled him into the dirt. Dale just collapsed, fell to his knees with his hands up, babbling about lawyers and immunity deals. And Lena stood frozen. She looked at the agents surrounding her, looked at the chaos erupting around her, and then, somehow, looked directly at the camera. At me. I'm sorry, she mouthed. I couldn't hear her over the shouting and the sirens, but I saw the words, and I felt nothing. The cleanup took hours, 12 sites locked down, 23 people arrested across the city. Victor's network was bigger than anyone had realized. By midnight, Marcus's conference room looked like a war zone, covered in evidence bags and preliminary reports. The testing lab is cooperating, Elena reported. They've already given us 18 months of falsified records. Every single report for Victor's projects, all fabricated. What about the safe in Victor's office? Marcus grinned. Jackpot. Financial records going back 5 years. Payroll for Dale Murphy, Lena, and 6 other city employees. Offshore account numbers. The whole operation, documented in his own handwriting. He kept receipts? Arrogant enough to think he'd never get caught. Marcus shook his head. Classic mistake. I was still there at 2 a.m., reading through the evidence logs, when Peterson came in. He'd been processed and released hours ago. His cooperation deal meant no jail time, though his career in construction was over. Thought you'd still be here. He sat down across from me, looking exhausted. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. About your wife, that must be… I can't imagine. You knew about them. I knew something was going on. Victor talked about her like… He stopped. Yeah, I knew. Why didn't you tell me? When you decided to cooperate, why didn't you warn me what I'd find? Peterson was quiet for a long moment. Would you have believed me? Some stranger calling to tell you your wife was sleeping with your boss and helping cover up construction fraud? You'd have thought I was crazy. He wasn't wrong. Besides, he continued, Marcus said the best evidence was what you'd already found, the documents in the toolbox, the way you connected the dots yourself. If someone had just handed you that information, it might not have held up the same way. I thought about the anonymous caller, the woman's voice, scratchy and disguised. Do you know who made the initial tip? Peterson shook his head. No idea. Wasn't me. I never found out who made that call. Part of me still wonders. The arrests made the news that night. By the next morning, it was the biggest story in Colorado. Construction mogul arrested in massive safety fraud scheme. City inspector, site supervisor, among those charged. Elementary school foundation fails inspection. Building condemned. That last one was the important one. An independent structural engineering firm had examined the Riverside Elementary Foundation and found it was already showing signs of stress. Another 6 months, maybe a year, and it would have failed. The school was scheduled to open in 2 weeks. 800 kids. That's how close it had been. The charges came down fast. Victor Hale faced 23 counts, including 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for Miguel and David. Dale Murphy got 15 counts of bribery, fraud, and conspiracy. The other supervisors and inspectors caught up in the scheme got varying levels of charges depending on their involvement. And Lena. Lena faced 12 federal counts. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Falsifying government documents. Accessory to involuntary manslaughter. Each count carrying a maximum of 5 to 10 years. Her lawyer tried to negotiate. Said she was a peripheral player, manipulated by Victor, unaware of the full scope of the scheme. The FBI played him the recording. The one where she talked about making sure Miguel didn't get the chance to report what he'd seen. The deal they offered was 8 years. She took it. I was there at her sentencing. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it end. Maybe I needed to look her in the eye one more time before she disappeared into the federal prison system for the better part of a decade. The courtroom was packed. Families of the dead workers, reporters, lawyers. I sat in the back, trying to be invisible. Victor went first. 25 years, no possibility of parole for at least 15. He screamed at the judge, screamed about unfair treatment and political persecution, until the marshals dragged him out. The last thing I heard him yell was something about how he'd built half this city, and this was the thanks he got. Dale Murphy got 15 years. He cried through his entire sentencing, blubbering about his family and his pension. The judge was unmoved. And then it was Lena's turn. She stood at the defense table in her orange jumpsuit, her belly huge now, 8 months along, and listened while the judge read the charges against her. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, she turned and looked at me. I know you're there, Ray. The courtroom went quiet. I know you're watching, and I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to. She paused, her voice breaking. I don't forgive myself. Every night since this started, I've woken up thinking about Miguel's family, about David's family, about all those kids who could have died because I was too weak to say no. She wiped her face with her cuffed hands. I'm not asking for sympathy. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know. When this started, I thought I could control it. I thought I could take the money and look the other way and nothing bad would really happen. By the time I realized how wrong I was in too deep to get out. That's not an excuse, I know that. I made choices. I have to live with them. She looked down at her belly. At our daughter. Please take care of her, Ray. Please don't let her grow up thinking she's broken because of what I did. She didn't ask for this. She's innocent. The judge gave her 8 years. Emma was born on December 14th in the medical wing of a federal detention center in Littleton. I was there for the delivery. The marshals let me hold her for about 20 minutes before they had to take Lena back to her cell. She was beautiful. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, dark hair like her mother, gray eyes like mine. She grabbed my finger and held on tight, like she knew she was going to need me. Lena watched us from the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. Promise me, she said. I promise. That was the last conversation we had. The first year of Emma's life was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'd done hard things. Walked steel beams 40 stories up in January wind, worked 16-hour shifts in summer heat, buried friends who'd fallen from scaffolds and been crushed by loads. But nothing compared to raising a newborn alone. Carlos and Maria practically moved in for the first 3 months. Maria would show up at 6 a.m. with a diaper bag and a casserole, take over Emma duties so I could shower and eat something that wasn't cold cereal, then stay until I got home from work. You don't have to do this, I told her one night, watching her rock Emma to sleep. You've got your own kids to worry about. My kids are in school. They can take care of themselves. She adjusted the blanket around Emma's tiny body. Besides, this one needs her tias and tios. She's going to have a big family, Ray, whether you like it or not. The Union brothers organized a rotation. Monday was Tony. Tuesday was Ramirez. Wednesday was a guy named Williams who'd worked with me on the Aurora site and had 3 daughters of his own. They'd show up with bottles and toys and endless patience, giving me time to work partial shifts and keep some money coming in. I'll pay you back, I kept saying. Shut up, Tony kept replying. You'd do the same for any of us. He was right. That's what union means. The next 6 months were a blur. I took paternity leave, then went back to work part-time while Carlos's wife helped with childcare. The Union brothers rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Tony organized a meal train that lasted 3 months, and the guys from my crew kept showing up to help with everything from diaper changes to late-night feedings. Elena Vasquez called me in February. OSHA was creating a new position, Federal Construction Safety Investigator. Someone who understood the technical side of building, but also knew how fraud schemes worked. Someone who could spot the kind of corruption that had killed Miguel and David before it killed anyone else. You interested? I looked at Emma, asleep in her swing. When do I start? By June, I was 6 months into my new career and finally starting to feel like I could breathe again. The training had been intense. Federal law enforcement protocols, investigative techniques, evidence handling, but the actual job felt natural. I'd spent 2 decades building things. Now I was making sure they got built right, My first major case was a housing project in Phoenix, where a developer was using recycled steel that didn't meet specifications. We shut them down before they poured the first floor. My second case was a hospital expansion in Seattle, where the concrete contractor had been diluting their mix to save money. We caught it during the foundation pour. My third case led me back to Colorado, to a structural engineering firm that was doing remediation work on condemned buildings, including Riverside Elementary. That's where I met Amanda. She was the lead engineer on the school project, overseeing the foundation replacement that would finally make the building safe for students. Tall, red hair, the kind of no-nonsense attitude that came from spending years in a male-dominated field. Our first meeting was supposed to be a 30-minute briefing. It lasted 2 hours. "These calculations are wrong," she said, pointing at the remediation specs. "Your inspector approved a reinforcement pattern that won't distribute the load properly." "Excuse me?" "The lateral support beams. They're offset by 3 inches from where they should be. Look." She pulled out her laptop and showed me a 3D model of the structure. "See how the load transfers through this connection point? With the current placement, you're creating a stress concentration right here." I studied the model. She was right. "How did you catch that?" "Because I actually do the math instead of just signing off on whatever the contractor hands me." She met my eyes, challenging. "No offense to your inspectors, but the whole reason this building almost collapsed is because people stopped paying attention to the details." "Some offense taken, but you're not wrong." We argued for the first 20 minutes of that meeting, something about load calculation methodologies and whether AISC standards were too conservative or not conservative enough. By the end of the hour, I'd asked her to dinner. She said no. "I don't date people I work with," she explained. "Creates conflicts of interest." "What if we weren't working together?" "We are working together." "What if we weren't?" She gave me a look that was half exasperation, half something else. "Ask me again when this project is done." The project took 4 months. I asked her again the day the final inspection was approved. She said yes. "You're the guy," she said, studying me across the table at the restaurant. "The one whose wife was involved in all this." "Ex-wife, and yeah. That must have been brutal." "It was." She was quiet for a moment. "The work you did, though, the investigation, the testimony, you saved those kids." "I had help." "Sure, but it started with you." She took a sip of her wine. "The engineering community talks about this case a lot, about how close it was, about how the system almost failed completely." She met my eyes. "You're kind of a hero, Ray." I thought about Miguel, about David, about all the things I could have done differently, all the signs I should have seen sooner. "I'm just a guy who found out his wife was cheating and accidentally stumbled into a federal conspiracy." Amanda laughed. "That's the most modest description of whistleblowing I've ever heard." A year after the arrests, the Department of Labor asked me to testify before Congress about construction safety reform. They were proposing new legislation, tighter regulations on material testing, mandatory independent inspections, harsher penalties for safety fraud. The night before my testimony, Amanda found me at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., surrounded by notes and documents. "You're going to be fine," she said, sitting down next to me. "I'm not worried about being fine. I'm worried about saying the right thing." I rubbed my eyes. These people have the power to change laws, to protect workers. If I mess this up, you won't mess it up. You know this stuff better than anyone. I know construction, I don't know politics. She took my hand. Then don't think about the politics. Think about Miguel. Think about David. Think about all the workers who are out there right now, trusting that someone's looking out for them. She squeezed. Tell their story. That's all you have to do. I sat at a long table in a wood-paneled hearing room, Emma's picture in my wallet, and told the senators what I'd seen. The falsified reports, the substandard materials, the workers who'd died because profit mattered more than safety, the children who'd almost died because adults couldn't be bothered to do their jobs right. Mr. Fisher, the committee chair said when I finished, based on your experience, do you believe these reforms will make a difference? I thought about Victor Hale, who'd probably be out in 15 years with good behavior. About Dale Murphy, who'd already started talking about writing a memoir. About all the other Victor Hales out there, running the numbers, deciding that the risk of getting caught was worth the reward of cutting corners. I think they'll help, I said. But the truth is, no amount of regulation is going to stop people who are determined to cheat. What makes the difference is having investigators who know what to look for. People who've been on job sites, who understand how things get built, who can spot a fake inspection report from 10 feet away. And people who are willing to come forward when they see something wrong? That too. I paused. The man who could have stopped this, Victor Hale's first project manager, the one before Peterson, he saw what was happening. He was uncomfortable with it. But he kept his mouth shut because he was scared of losing his job. By the time Peterson finally talked, 2 men were dead, and 800 kids were a few months away from being buried in rubble. What would you say to someone in that position now? Someone who suspects something but isn't sure? I'd say trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And the cost of staying quiet is always higher than the cost of speaking up, even if you can't see it yet. The testimony made the news. So did the legislation, which passed both houses 2 months later. They called it the Fisher-Reyes Act after me and Miguel. His widow sent me a letter when it passed. Just a few lines in Spanish. Carlos translated. Thank you for giving my husband's death meaning. Thank you for making sure it mattered. Emma took her first steps on a Thursday afternoon in October at the newly reopened Riverside Elementary playground. Amanda was with me. We'd been dating for 4 months by then, long enough to know this was something real. She'd come with us to the ribbon-cutting ceremony, where the mayor gave a speech about safety and accountability and learning from mistakes. I'd politely declined to speak. But afterward, when the officials had left and the reporters had gotten their footage, I carried Emma over to the playground and set her down on the soft rubber surface near the swings. She stood there for a second, wobbling, looking at me with those gray eyes. Then she took 1 step. 2. 3. Amanda grabbed my arm. Ray, she's walking. I dropped to my knees and held out my hands. Emma grinned and tottered toward me, picking up speed, until she crashed into my chest and I scooped her up and held her tight. Behind us, I could hear children laughing on the new equipment. The sounds of a school that was safe because we'd made it that way. She's going to be something, Amanda said, watching Emma try to grab my nose. I can tell. Yeah. I kissed my daughter's forehead. She is. My phone buzzed. A text from Tony. Got a weird situation on the Aurora site. Concrete doesn't look right. Can you come take a look? I typed back, on my way. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Work? Always, I handed Emma to her. Shouldn't take long. Be careful. Always am. I walked to my truck, thinking about foundations and load-bearing walls and all the things that hold us up when we don't even realize they're there. Behind me, Emma laughed at something Amanda was doing, and the sound carried across the playground like a promise. There was work to do. There always would be. But for the first time in a long time, I was ready for it. 5 years later, the reunion happened at the federal courthouse in Denver on a gray morning in March. Victor Hale's parole hearing. I wasn't required to attend. The FBI had offered to notify me of the outcome without me having to sit through the proceedings. But I'd declined. Some things you have to face in person. Victor looked smaller than I remembered. The silver hair was gone, replaced by a gray buzz cut. The tan had faded to a prison pallor. But the eyes were the same, calculating, cold, already working angles before the hearing even started. I sat in the gallery with the families of Miguel and David, watching his lawyer argue for early release. Good behavior, remorse, commitment to rehabilitation. Then they called me to speak. I walked to the microphone, looked at Victor, and said what I'd come to say. This man built his fortune on the bodies of dead workers. He bribed officials, falsified safety reports, and used substandard materials in buildings where people live and work and send their children to school. 2 men are dead because of his decisions. 800 children almost died. I paused. But here's the thing about construction. You can tear down a building, but the foundation stays. The damage goes deep. Miguel Reyes's son is 11 now. He'll never get over losing his father. David Watkins's wife had to move in with her parents because she couldn't afford the mortgage after he died. The ripple effects of what Victor Hale did will last for generations. I looked at the parole board. I'm not asking you to keep him locked up forever. That's not my call. But I'm asking you to remember that rehabilitation means more than good behavior in a controlled environment. It means understanding that the choices you made have consequences that can never be undone. And from where I'm standing, I don't see any evidence that Victor Hale understands that at all. Victor glared at me from the defendant's table. The parole board denied his petition. He'd have to wait another 3 years before he could try again. Outside the courthouse, Miguel's widow was waiting. She'd aged 10 years in the 5 since her husband died, but there was something lighter in her face now. Closure, maybe. Or just the relief of seeing the man responsible face real consequences. Gracias, she said, and hugged me. Gracias por todo. It's what he deserved. Her son stood beside her, 16 years old now, tall like his father had been. He didn't say anything, just extended his hand. I shook it. I'm going to be an engineer, he said. I'm going to build things that don't fall down. Good, I said. The world needs more people like you. Amanda and I got married on a Saturday in June, on the construction site of a new community center we'd helped design together. Emma was the flower girl. She took the job very seriously, marching down the aisle with her basket of petals and her face scrunched up in concentration. My union brothers were all there. Tony gave a toast about the worst best man he'd ever had to vouch for. Carlos made everyone cry with a speech about family and loyalty, and how sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who lead you to the people who matter. I didn't think about Lena that day. Didn't have room for it. She had 3 years left on her sentence. She'd written letters. I'd read a few, but I hadn't responded. Some bridges you burn can't be rebuilt. You just learn to live on the other side. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 2 years after the wedding. Amanda was pregnant with our second child. Emma was 7, obsessed with dinosaurs and determined to be an architect when she grew up. Mr. Fisher, this is the Bureau of Prisons. We're calling to notify you that Lena Fisher has been released to a halfway house in Aurora. I'd known it was coming, had been preparing for it. But the reality still hit like a punch to the gut. Does she know where we live? She's been informed that any contact requires your explicit consent. Good. Keep it that way. I hung up and sat at my desk for a long time, looking at the picture of Emma on my wedding day. 3 nights later, Lena called Amanda's phone. Don't ask me how she got the number. Ray, please, I just want to see her, just once. Amanda handed me the phone with raised eyebrows. Lena, I know I don't deserve anything. I know what I did. But she's my daughter too. I just want to know she's okay. She's okay. She's happy. She's got a mom who didn't help kill people. Silence on the other end. Ray, I've changed. 8 years. You learn things about yourself. You learn to face what you did. Good for you. Please, I'm not asking to be part of her life. I'm just asking for one visit. Supervised. You can be there the whole time? I thought about Emma. About the questions she'd started asking about her first mommy. About the therapist who'd suggested that some contact might be healthy, might help her understand her story without shame. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. I hung up. Amanda watched me for a moment. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. She came over and put her hand on my shoulder. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. The visit happened 6 months later at a neutral location, a family counseling center with experience in cases like ours. Emma had been prepared by her therapist. I'd been prepared by mine. Lena looked older. The years inside had taken their toll. But when Emma walked into the room, something in her face softened in a way I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Hi, Emma. Hi. Emma stuck close to me, holding my hand. You're my birth mom. That's right. Daddy says you made some bad choices. Lena nodded slowly. Your daddy's right. I made some very bad choices. I hurt people. I went to prison because of it. But you're out now? I'm out now. And I'm trying to be a better person. Emma considered this with the gravity only a 7-year-old can muster. My real mom is Amanda. She makes me pancakes and reads me stories. I know. I'm glad you have her. But Daddy says you're the one who grew me in your tummy. I did. Was I a good baby? Lena's eyes filled with tears. You were the best baby. You are the best thing I ever did. They talked for an hour about Emma's school, about dinosaurs, about the community center where I'd gotten married. Emma showed her pictures on my phone, chattering about everything and nothing, while Lena listened like each word was water in a desert. When it was over, Emma hugged her briefly and ran to me. Can we get ice cream now? Sure, baby. Lena caught my eye as we walked out. Thank you, she mouthed. I nodded once and kept walking. That was 3 years ago. Emma's 10 now. She knows the whole story, or as much of it as a 10-year-old can understand. She sees Lena twice a year for supervised visits. She calls Amanda Mom and Lena Lena. It's not perfect, but it's something. I'm still with OSHA, still hunting down the Victor Hales of the world. Last month, I cracked a case in Houston, a developer using falsified soil reports to build on unstable ground. The geotechnical engineer he'd bribed was good at hiding his tracks, but not good enough. One of the concrete pour supervisors had noticed strange settling patterns and reached out through the new whistleblower hotline the Fisher-Reyes Act established. We shut down the site within 48 hours. 300 apartments evacuated before anything collapsed. 30 families who might have lost everything, homes, possessions, lives, were safe because someone paid attention and someone else took the call seriously. That's the job now. Not building things myself anymore, but making sure the people who do build things aren't cutting the corners that kill people. Some days I miss the work, miss the feel of steel under my hands, the satisfaction of watching a building rise from nothing, the camaraderie of a crew that trusts each other with their lives. But then I'll get a call about a suspicious inspection report, or a tip about materials that don't quite add up, and I'll remember why I made the switch. Every building is a promise that the walls will hold, that the floor won't give way, that the roof will stay up when the snow falls. My job is making sure that promise gets kept. Amanda and I have a son now, James, named after my dad, who passed away the year after Emma was born. He's 2 years old, obsessed with trucks and making as much noise as humanly possible. The Fisher-Reyes Act was updated last year. Tougher penalties, more funding for investigators, a new whistleblower protection program that's already generated over 100 credible tips. Sometimes I think about how it all started. An anonymous phone call during lunch, a toolbox with a hidden compartment, a wife I thought I knew. I never found out who made that call. Never tried that hard, honestly. Whoever she was, she'd seen something wrong and decided to do something about it. That's more than most people manage. Miguel's kid is 16 now. He's planning to become an engineer, wants to design buildings that can't fall down. His mom calls me every year on the anniversary of Miguel's death to tell me how he's doing. David Watkins's wife remarried. I met her husband at the dedication of the community center. A good guy, treats her right. She still keeps David's picture on the mantle, next to one of him and me from a job site barbecue. Some days I still wake up angry. At Lena. At Victor. At myself for not seeing it sooner. But the anger doesn't run my life anymore. I've got too much to do. Yesterday, I got an email from a structural engineer in Philadelphia. She'd seen something wrong on a hospital project she was inspecting. Substandard bolts, same pattern as the ones Victor used on the mixed-use building. She wanted to know what to do. I called her back that afternoon. Don't wait, I told her. Don't hope it goes away. Document everything and call your local OSHA office. Today. What if I'm wrong? Then you're wrong and everyone moves on. But what if you're right? She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. Good. I hung up and looked out my office window at the Denver skyline. 32 buildings in my line of sight. All of them holding people who trusted that someone, somewhere, had done their job right. Most of the time, someone had. My job was to make sure it stayed that way. The end.